Hello, I'm back with a little bit more Synth East prep. I came at it with a really good approach to try to minimise everything down into a single case, just to keep it simple and easy. But my mind can't cope with that. My mind wants to run in 15 different directions. It wants to do different things. It fears the space and longevity, and thinks that I need to change and adjust. I need to put more stuff in. I need this and I need this and I need this, and just in case I might need this. And that's led me to the conclusion ultimately that it's not going to fit in here. I mean, I need to take everything. I'm not going to do that. I have to I have to be able to walk to the venue ultimately. So I think I've come back to my double Arturia. It just gives me that little bit more space, which ultimately means I have more choices on the day. That seems to make sense to me. I don't know. I might change again tomorrow, but I've got to move forward. And the wonderful thing is that it gives me something else to procrastinate about, because rather than actually trying to make any music, I can now shift modules around like forever and not actually have to play a note. In fact, it'll be an interesting performance piece just to be there shifting modules around. I'm sure people would come to watch. It could be fascinating. So yes, here I am. I mean, my week was interrupted by Descartes' Dream, as you're probably aware, but that was okay because I'd just, funnily enough, spoken to a whole bunch of different manufacturers who, for some reason, were sending me modules. I had a bit of a flurry of new modules, and that's quite exciting. And some of them I thought, well, hey, I mean, let's just drop them into the case and let's make music with them, man. That'd be fantastic. And so I kind of felt, well, let's take a day and have a look at Descartes' Dream, and I'll wait for these other modules to turn up before I make all my decisions on it. But of course, these modules have taken longer than anticipated. Some of them are not even going to make it here in time for the show. And I also ended up taking a whole week with the Descartes' Dream, which I hadn't intended. But that doesn't matter. What matters now is that I slowly bring this together. I'm sort of going through modules, trying to decide whether is that useful or not, and then keeping it or discarding it. For instance, the ASQ1 here, which is a great sequencer. It's also very large, but it lends itself to performance. Now, I wasn't actually very sure whether you could perform with it, write with it as you go. I seem to find that because it's like an SH101 style sequencer, you sort of program in step mode and then set it going, which is not very useful in a jam situation, because you sort of have to go, all right, I'm stepping in a bunch of things, boom, and then it goes. You need to be able to just put stuff in on the fly. And so I was about to take this out, and then I thought, well, no, I'll just have another look at the manual and demos and bits and pieces, latest firmware, all that kind of stuff. And actually, you can play it on the fly. You can record sequences on the fly. It's an overdub mode, which you can fool it into thinking there's a sequence running when there's actually nothing in the sequence, and then add notes to it. And that essentially allows you to play a couple of notes and then it will repeat that. And that's actually very, very useful. Now I know that Steve is not particularly into that kind of structure of melody, so is that useful in that context? Or could it be an interesting way of bending and pushing what happens into something perhaps a little bit more melodic and structured at some part of the set? Interesting, you see, because we haven't talked about these things. We're just going to be face to face on the day going, go on in, and seeing what happens. So in some ways it's a really interesting way to bring a different flavour to the whole thing. That's maybe a little bit less accidental, if you know what I mean. But what does that mean in reality? I don't know. I just want to take 3 cases of modular so that I can make decisions later and then just play. Because when it comes down to it, I mean, it ends up being a relatively simple, but you kind of want more than one simple thing, because you need to be able to move to other things. And that's what I'm trying to crack at the moment. What is it that gives me something interesting, which I can then move on easily to something else which is also interesting, and then maybe come back, or maybe change, maybe repatch. That's the thing. So what am I going to do? I don't know. The one thing that has turned up, which is awesome, is this, which is the Zaps from Winter and Plankton. Again, it's a big module, which is a shame, perhaps. But it is interesting. It could create an interesting noise. It's got a lot of modulation in there. There's all sorts of stuff I could do. Do I realistically think I can explore this enough to drop it in the set somewhere? And is it actually going to fit, or is it too much of a thing? That's the question. Fascinating though. Long time we've been waiting for this as well. I mean, I like so much about it. Although it's a screen, menus and things. Oh, I don't know. I'll have to give that some thought. So I'll put that to the side for the moment. I'm just going to focus on whether the ASQ1 is in or is it out. Is it in or is it out? If I put it in, it means I can create some melodies on the fly. It also gives me another 4 triggers for drums and other things that are happening, because I'm already got my U-grids over here, which is going to be doing a thing. This is going to have to find its way in. Do I use the Trinity or not? Maybe I can remove this and use the Plankton instead, maybe, but then this is 3 channels of drums. But then I've got 2 channels of drums in the Pico drums, just very simply. Or I could go the noise route with the noise plethora and the Bufacco Percle. You see, lots of options. Gotta whittle it down. And I thought I was taking this out, and now I'm wondering about it. Because I've just had a really nice half hour playing with it. See, that's the problem. That's always the problem. I mean, just to demonstrate what I mean, I'm not recording the sound from this at the moment, so you're just going to have to, hear it through the camera mic. But very simply, I'm going to kill that sequence. I'm going to set a length for the sequence, and then it's running. See, that's nice, and there's nothing going on, but it's actually running. So now, if I put it into record mode, I can overdub. Yeah, I'm not going to get it bang on, but there you go. So it's running straight away without me having to step record something in. And that's pretty creative, So, there's lots of potential there. Obviously, I need to put in some mutes in the right places so I can turn things on and off quite simply. That could be a winner. I like the ability to generate melodies in that way. I think that's quite cool and could crash into itself quite easily if you're just like outputting crap. But with a bit of luck, with the right sort of thing, that could be interesting. Also, the fact that it's there. It's ultimately a keyboard in your system where you could, if you have something with a bit more stuff going on, you could just start, put in some notes. at some other point. So there we go. So that at the moment is sticking around, I think. I'm just gonna have to work it out. So I'm going to continue to play on this. I might update this particular video a little bit later. If not, I'll just chuck it out there, and just so you can see where I am at the moment. But it is it's Saturday, and I've got a few hours I can steal from over this weekend that I'm going to slowly, I hope, build everything into here. See, I was going to my plan was that I was going to take that out, and that was going to be my whole percussion section here. What do I do now? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's tricky. Too many things. Keep it simple. This does keep it simple. I can do different things with it. I've just got to learn it a bit better, get a bit more fluid on it, and I have time for that. So that's interesting. Just the fact that it's 2 channels of stuff and 4 channels of triggers. The downside purely is that it's very intentional, whereas a lot of the usual stuff I do is pretty much accidental. In sequencer on a few knobs, going through a quantizer. I've restrained a bunch of roughness through a quantizer in order to give me something, and I ride and follow that and enjoy that, whereas this is me writing a tune. These 2 things are very different. So maybe what I need to do is put this to one side and play with modular in a different way, and then come back to see whether it fits in or not. It is very much like bringing a keyboard sequencer, and that's both a pro and a con. Both a pro and a con. Oh my goodness me. I know what I'll do. I'll plug in the zaps and just have a play with that, see what happens. Anyway, I will talk to you later. So reporting back after a few hours today, fiddling around with the thing, and what essentially I've been doing is trying to craft together the percussion section, the drum section. And it's not something you necessarily haven't seen before. It's what I was running in here, although it's developed a little bit because I seem to be leaving out the Trinity, which is unexpected, but I kind of found that I was doing most of what that does elsewhere, and so it became a little bit superfluous. There was lots of it for perhaps only one sound, and I was having more fun actually with the zaps, I have to say, which is an extraordinary thing. So that turned up this afternoon, the winter and plankton zaps, and that was a whole bundle of fun. I have no clue what it is it's supposed to be doing, but you twiddle things and move things, and by golly, that does interesting bits and pieces. So, to explain where I am at the moment, I'm keeping the SQ one at the moment. I quite like that interaction, the ability to create and change bass line very simply. I'm trying to compartmentalize it in my head. Particularly for the evening, the half hour with Steve Davis, is I imagine in my head we'll probably begin with something quite sort of ambient and exploratory and weird, and we'll try to find things within that, and then we'll probably finish with madness and chaos. But I feel quite strongly that somewhere in the middle we need to pull together a bit of banging techno for everyone to tap the feet to and nod the heads to. So that is what I think this would be particularly good at. It's just a question of how the heck do you get from bumbling, babbling nonsense into focused groove back out into chaos. That's going to be the challenge, I think. And also I've also got to think that it's not just me playing, there's both of us, so he's going to be contributing a whole load of stuff, so I don't necessarily need to sound like everything, but then if I'm sounding like everything then it's easier to drop stuff out than it is to invent stuff on the fly, if you know what I mean. So what have I got going on? So I've got, shall I bring you in? Yeah, let me see if I can bring you in a bit closer. So what we've got going on at the moment, so I've got the sequencer here, and that's running purely a sequence, not a whole lot else. It's also running a clap. So for my drums, I've now got the zaps over here. I've got the pico drums, just really actually filling in on snare, because I've got the kick drum in the kickane. And I really like this kick drum sidechain thing, and I like it so much that I find it really difficult to try to replace that kick drum. So I'm just going to go with it, and it sounds nice, it feels nice, that just sort of works. So that's already taken away from the Trinity, and then the zaps is taken away from another part of the Trinity. So those two things kind of, as I say, make the Trinity superfluous. Trinity worked brilliantly in its own context, but in this, not so much. So with the snare drum, I could go a noise route with the noise plethora and the Percle, to try to do it that way, and that's a really nice way of creating snares and hi-hats. But I've got enough going on, as it were, and that would take up quite a chunk. So I'm just going to see whether that works, and that leaves me space, because I do still have things like the build up and drop that I was quite keen to use. But also, it kind of does one thing. It does that one thing really well. You know, you go crazy and then you drop it. I think it's a brilliant little thing. But I don't know where I'm fitting that in at the moment. And also, if I want a little bit more nuance on my drums, I don't know whether that's the thing for it. So, you know, still playing around. So at the moment, I've got my microgrids over here, my U-grids. That's running through the mutes. So I've got kick drum there. Absolutely nothing there, obviously. And nothing there. But I'll work those bits out in a minute. What did I turn off? So I've got my kick drum. I've got the offbeat clap coming from the drums. I've got a snare. And then I've got zaps. Which has the ability to do all sorts of things. And then all of these drums here are being controlled by my Motion meter over here. So I can very quickly dial in a fill or whatever. I mean, all these are doing are controlling the knobs on the U-grids, which are too small really to get to. So I like this because it's nice and big. Not sure about this yet. Still working on it. So that's about it, really. I've got a sequence running through this oscillator and the Instruo filter, which is just very simple. But it works, you know. So let me demo it a bit. Smooth, smooth. Something a bit like that. That's the plan. That's the general gist, I suppose. Something along those lines. For some of it, I mean, I'm finding it interesting bringing the polycinematic back in. I'm struggling more with the chord pilot. I'm finding that's not as intuitive as I thought it would be. But what I probably need to do is plug a MIDI keyboard into it and put in the chords that I actually want to use. I can't seem to find things in here already that are working for me. Whereas stuff that I've previously put into the polycinematic, like that particular chord, I really like and can use that to the cows come home. And it can fit in there nicely. It's something you can drop in and drop out, and it has a little bit of variation. I think that can really work. So I might have to work that in somewhere. Otherwise, looking for that variation and that change. I mean, the problem perhaps with the zaps that I'm finding is trying to find your way back to that hi-hat. Maybe I need a hi-hat in some other form somewhere else that I can put in solidly and then play around with this. Or not. Or maybe I've got to work out what the presets are like so I can quickly go back to something which is just a lovely, thundery, clangy, clingy. What am I talking about? Hi-hat. Yeah. So, lots to explore, but as a basis and of something, I've got something going on, definitely. And I have a lot more space for change and other things, which is important at this point. So I can still easily fit in my pizza and my chicken eyes and all that going on in here. I can stick the surface and an arpeggiator and something of that nature to add some difference. I want to use a stochastic inspiration generator in here somewhere to be able to explore with other notes and bits and pieces, and then I need to get crazy and modular about it. But I think as a as a techno set, you could probably fit that everything that I was doing in this one bottom bit here, and then just use that. Variegate 4 Plus again. Sorry, Steve. Keeps showing its beauty and its usefulness just in putting in something, just in putting in a gate. How else can I do that? I mean, I can do that within the ASQ1, but I seem to have less control over the length of that and the probability. Those sorts of natures of the variegate are brilliant. So I'm afraid I really don't want to let that go. That just throws itself up being useful every time. So good, yeah, good movement, good like that. Still, I like the percussion. There just needs to be a level. There needs to be a level I can switch to somehow in my head that's not quite there yet. I think that's often a hi-hat thing. So although Zaps is being a hi-hat, like I said, I'm going around in circles now. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm currently only using Pam's as a bit of a clock in 3 different places, which could all be running off the same clock. So I haven't explored anything interesting with that. So that's another task I want to do this week, is spend a bit of time working out whether there's useful stuff in there. I want to be running these sequences here for doing weird stuff and other different rhythms and grooves and stuff going. So yeah, all right, that was good. That's good. That's today. That's Saturday. I think that's enough. I'll better go and cook the tea, do the family thing, and see if I can get back at it tomorrow. See what that brings. But yeah, good. Feeling good. Go make some tunes.